Welcome to the Why Did I Get Cancer podcast. I'm Deborah Herlax-Enos, a small-town girl turned TV nutritionist and healthy living expert. I design health programs for the average guy or gal, including those average guys named Metallica. On September 1st, 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I asked every oncologist the same question, why did I get cancer? But none of my doctors had good answers for me. I wanted answers, and that's why I started this podcast. I want to help you to lower your cancer risk and provide self-care tips for those in the battle. I'm getting answers, and I want to share them with you. All right, artificial turf. I've never even thought about this being a toxin, so goodness, until I read a newsletter from Abbie at the Filtery about artificial turf. So I was kind of past that point of playing on it, but our kids played on artificial turf, and it used to just drive me a little nutty when they'd come home and there'd be those little black chunks all over my house, staining my carpet, all those things. Here's the deal. Artificial turf started kind of as a good idea, meaning, kids can play outside, 12 months a year. Maybe there's not a lot of maintenance, but here's the problem. Artificial turf, also originally known as chemical turf, it is full of all the things that we don't want in our lives, on our kids, all of those things. So it's got PFAS on it. The composite, which is the bottom part, is made from old tires. So when you think about what tires pick up when they're on the road, every chemical known to man pretty much is in artificial turf. So here's some interesting data that they found. When it gets really hot out, it can be 30 degrees warmer on artificial turf than it can be on real grass. So what happens when things get hot? Vapors start to come out. And so another anecdotal study found that there's a lot of PFAS, those forever chemicals. Think about Teflon pans. Forever chemicals are actually sprayed on the grass to keep the fake grass from touching each other. So what they found is that when kids played, their skin was tested and they had more PFAS on their skin after exercising than before. So what do? Today's guest gave us a lot of great tips. Some of them as simple as have your kids wash their hands before they have their, middle of the game snack. So tune in today's episode. Again, kind of blew my mind because I knew nothing about artificial turf. Enjoy. Oh, so today, you guys, oh my gosh, Abbie at the Filtery. This newsletter that she sends out will change your life. She does all the heavy lifting. So if you're curious about what you should be wearing on your body, what kind of lotion you should be wearing, how to lower your toxin load, Abbie is your person. I'm going to have all the links in the show notes, how you sign up for her newsletter. So Abbie, welcome to Why Did I Get Cancer?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here, and that's such a nice intro.
Well, we're all busy, and we can't possibly keep up with the amount of things that we should avoid in life so that we don't get sick. So God made people like you who are doing the heavy lifting for the rest of us. So I have so many questions, but you wrote an article maybe a couple of months ago about a topic I had never thought about. So thank you for shocking me. Artificial turf. Artificial turf. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
How
it's overtaking our parks and sport fields and playgrounds and even lawns.
And I read in your article that it actually used to be called chem turf, so chemical turf. Oh my gosh, if that's not a red flag right there, that our kids are then playing on, childhood cancer's off the charts. People call me a conspiracy theorist, but honestly, we don't want our kids exercising in a toxic environment.
Yeah, this topic drives me a little bit more nuts than the rest of them because everything else about playing on turf, whether you're at a playground or in a sport, playing soccer or football or whatever, everything else about that is good for you, healthy. You're outside, you're in the fresh air, you're exercising, you're learning teamwork, you're not in front of a screen, you're in nature. And so the fact that the toxicity of artificial turf is so counter to everything else about what you're doing while you're on that turf. It just drives me nuts. And the fact that, there's been a lot of talk with professional
Mm-hmm.
athletes and artificial turf, but, a lot of the people who are on this turf are kids, whether they're
Right.
on a playground or playing, their league
Mm-hmm.
sports. And yeah, it's really sad. It's a huge industry. I
Hmm.
think the last number I saw was over, I think it was like over $114 billion globally. It's
Wow.
projected to be by like 2028, I think. There are all kinds of, like, the private equity groups are involved.
Hmm.
There are lobbying groups involved. Investors like Berkshire Hathaway. It's a big money
Hmm.
thing,
Follow the
which,
money.
when
I
you're
always say, who's going to
exactly.
profit? But I'm thinking it might have initially seemed like a good environmental move to do artificial turf because then you're not spraying chemicals on your lawn and you're saving water. But is it a good environmental move?
Yeah, so one of the biggest arguments for artificial turf is that you can play on it year
Hmm.
round. So with real grass, you can't, you have to give that grass time to rest. So you have to have, or, the grass will stop growing and it will just become dirt. So you can't put these kids playing sports on it 24/7,
Right.
365. And real grass requires maintenance. So yeah, pesticides, mowing, water,
Hmm.
etc. So that's one of the biggest, arguments for using artificial turf. But unfortunately, a lot of times it's kind of marketed as something that is maintenance
Hmm.
free. Artificial turf is, and it's not. It's not a perfect solution either. Aside from the toxicity, which we'll get to in just a second, it has to be replaced every few years and it's very
Hmm.
expensive, which is, a lot of these like small town parks and stuff that are using it, like it's millions of dollars that they're having to spend
Really?
to replace
Okay.
these artificial turf, fields and parks every few years. They're also not very resilient to extreme weather, so
Hmm.
they're prone to flooding. So
Oh,
after big storms, they
sure.
have to be replaced then as well. So, when people say, "Oh, we can't have real grass because it's more maintenance, etc." Okay, well, artificial turf with regard to cost and maintenance is not perfect
Hmm.
either. So, I think that's important for people to keep in mind when they're weighing the pros and
Hmm.
cons of
Okay.
both.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the toxins and what are we exposing people to? And they're running on it. So sure, maybe it's, adding toxins to their feet, but does it, get into our bodies?
Yes. So there's three kind of like main parts of the turf, and all of them are
Mhm.
toxic. So we have the actual plastic grass blades, which are just made of
Mhm.
plastic. There's the crumb rubber, that's that black
Mhm.
fill that we see. Sometimes you'll see it like on during football games or something, you'll see it like on the athletes'
Yes, and our
faces
kids used
because
to
it
track it
sticks
in
to
the
them.
house. I remember those
Yes,
days.
it's so
So
messy. And people will even
messy.
like breathe it in. You're breathing in chunks of that stuff
Oh,
is made of recycled tires.
oh my gosh. So,
And tires are known to be one of the biggest sources of
mhm.
microplastics just from like cars driving on the road.
Mhm.
And then we have the PFAS, the forever
Yeah.
chemicals, which are added to the grass blades to make them kind of like stick up and not stick to each
Mhm.
other while things are wet.
Hmm.
So, and when they do actual studies looking into the specific chemicals
Mhm.
that are in, whether it's the crumb rubber or the plastic or the PFAS, they find basically every type of toxic chemical that you can think of. They find endocrine disruptors like phthalates and
Oh my
BPA. They
gosh.
find heavy metals like lead and mercury and arsenic.
Oh,
They find
wow.
VOCs like
Mhm.
benzene. They find PAHs, which are carcinogenic. So I can't even, I like, there's Yeah, it's
Wow.
bad.
So, what a great idea. Let's make this big giant field and then put our children out there where they're inhaling all this crap and possibly causing
Yes,
future problems to them, DNA, all of that.
yes. And to make matters worse, these chemicals, like the off gassing, it gets worse in the heat.
I've heard that it gets really
So
hot. Is that correct?
the surfaces themselves get hotter.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen some folks go out with one of those temperature guns, and it'll be a hot day, and they'll measure real grass versus
Mm-hmm.
turf. And the temperature difference is insane to the point where sometimes they'll be like, don't, you can't walk on this grass in bare feet, this turf in bare feet. I even heard from a referee who said he started refusing to play on artificial turf because his cleats started melting.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So you have the heat itself
Right.
not being good for like your skin or
Mm-hmm.
whatever materials. Then you have the heat increasing the leaching, because heat usually increases toxic leaching from anything,
Absolutely. And then you've got the
especially
vapors,
plastic.
right? Mm-hmm.
The vapors, exactly, that you're breathing
Mm-hmm.
in. And then you mentioned, whether or not or how much of this stuff we're actually absorbing when we're playing on the artificial turf or when our kids are,
Mm-hmm.
whoever. They have looked at various types of studies. One of them that comes to mind is they measured how much PFAS could be identified on someone's skin
Oh.
before and after playing on artificial turf. And they found that, yes, the amount of PFAS were indeed more measurable after they played on the turf versus beforehand.
So what we're talking about then, PFAS, forever chemicals. Think about your Teflon pans and different things like that. Okay,
Yes.
so then you've got a kid out there or an adult. They're exercising, they're exercising hard, so their skin is hot. PFAS are landing on it, and your skin is your biggest organ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a woman, she coaches soccer, or she did coach, I'm not sure if she still currently does, at the University of
Mm-hmm.
Washington. She's coached for the U.S. women's national team as well, I believe. And she started noticing a trend of soccer players, young soccer
Mm-hmm.
players, who were diagnosed with cancer and the same types of cancer, mainly lymphomas. And so
Wow.
she started keeping a list of athletes, and she's put together a list of, I think she's at over 200 athletes, young athletes who have developed cancer,
Wow.
most of them soccer players. And something interesting that she's found is that a disproportionate number of them are goalkeepers. And if you think about it, they're rolling around on the actual turf more than the other
Yeah,
players.
you're right.
And, we do have to be careful with that type of data because it is just,
Anecdotal.
correlation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a controlled
Right.
study, etc. But it does raise an interesting question that, like, when combined with other data,
Mm-hmm.
is concerning
It is
to a lot
concerning.
of parents, especially when these kids, more and more these days are in sports all the
All the
time.
time. All the time.
And so we're not talking about an every once in a while exposure. We're talking about hours a
Mm-hmm.
day, a week,
Right. I love the holidays. It's happening, you guys. It is happening. One thing I don't love about the holidays, though, is feeling like I'm always in a hurry. I'm always hustling, and that I get a little bit caught up in purchasing things for people. Not that my family doesn't love that, wink, wink. But this year, I have decided to kind of go a different direction. And I'm giving, as you can imagine, gifts that increase health, lower people's toxin load, maybe gets rid of worms and parasites. I don't know, but I have made a list of all of the things that, quite honestly, if you want to get me for Christmas, you certainly can. But this is a list of all of the products that I use probably on a weekly, if not a daily basis. And it's the reason why I use them. And these are companies that I've vetted, and I really love the products. I love the customer service, and that is all really important to me. So I have this list available. If you go to the link in the show notes, I've got, and it's really short and sweet. I've got about 15 items on there that I truly can't live without, that I think would make great gifts for those in your family and is just in your circle that you want to bless. I have coupon codes for some and others I don't, and they're just products that I really love and I really enjoy. And I know that you're probably going to get some great benefit out of it. And I've done the work for you. So you're welcome. Hee hee. And I would imagine, so I live in Washington State, and I'd read about the University of Washington soccer coach who had been keeping that information. And we also have, indoor facilities because, again, it rains just like in Sleepless in Seattle, 9 months a year here. So we have our kids inside. So I would imagine, is the toxic level going to be higher because they're inside and there's just not that fresh air blowing through?
I haven't seen any specific data on that, but I would think so. I mean,
too.
generally that is the case where inside air is more polluted just because it's less diluted.
Right.
And there's less airflow. So I would think that it is probably worse, unfortunately.
I would think it would probably be worse. I also read something on your site, and it was a 2023 article emerged talking about PFAS in artificial turf and glioblastoma in 6 Philadelphia Phillies players. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. I kind of forgot about that one actually, but again, this is just another one that, we can't really, correlation does not mean causation. Right. And so just because we see that these athletes are developing the same, but basically, exactly what you said. It was several Phillies professional MLB players developed the same type of cancer, and it raised this question of like, what was it something on that field that caused it? And again, I think that just adds to the data that this is probably not a good thing for us to be playing on. I mean, some professional athletes will refuse to play on synthetic turf, especially European athletes, soccer players. They don't have as many artificial turf fields over in Europe as we do here. And there's the toxicity piece, but also it's worse for injuries. So that's one of the reasons why athletes don't like playing on it, because like ligament tears and things like that. And also they say just the way that the ball bounces is different. And so it's harder. You kind of have to like adjust your play when you're on artificial turf versus grass. So there are a lot of reasons why professional athletes don't like it either. And there's even been a few, like I forget what it's called, but the professional soccer league in the Netherlands, and then I believe the one in Scotland as well, have recently started to phase out artificial turf fields from their professional soccer leagues.
Very interesting. Okay. So, and things aren't going to change until it's the professional athletes that are going to really set the stage for the rest of us. So
I do think they have more pull.
They sure do than you and I do. But it's interesting that now people are probably going to start paying a little bit more attention. And again, this is a topic I knew absolutely nothing about. And when I was a collegiate athlete, it was grass. Like it wasn't a thing yet. And now it seems to be so common. And you're driving through a neighborhood and all of a sudden you'll see this beautiful lawn. And then you get closer, you go, oh, it's plastic. Like people are doing this in their personal homes now too.
Yeah, I don't really know why you would do it in your personal home, to be honest. Like there's so many, like you can at least make the argument for, I've seen folks in communities say like, we don't have enough real fields to facilitate the number of like kids sports teams that we have year round. Like we need the artificial fields in order for them to play sports. And I think that, I think we can find a better solution, but that is like a valid argument, I think. But having plastic on your lawn, I don't understand it. even real grass lawns aren't great. I'm kind of
Yes.
a believer in the native lawns and
Hmm.
wildflowers and, helping our pollinators
Right.
out, but that's another
It is,
topic.
but it is a valid topic. And, lawns are just feels like such a recent thing where you're driving through a neighborhood and you see this beautiful estate with the giant lawn. And, we have a giant lawn and I'm always talking to my husband saying, can we do more, fruit trees over here and do this? So I'm aware of it. And we want to make changes. But I think my driving question to you right now is, what do we do? We're not going to pull our kids out of sports because, as you mentioned earlier, like we want them outside. We want them, with companionship and camaraderie and, team building. But how do we protect them in this toxic environment of sports and playing on artificial turf?
Yes. I think there's a lot of things we can do. I have heard of folks pulling their kids out of sports because of
Hmm.
this, which, I mean, obviously that's your right, but I personally think that there's so many benefits to playing sports. That would definitely not be my first
I agree.
recommendation. So, doing simple things like washing your hands after playing or, showering if you're like rolling around and like getting it all over your skin
Hmm.
can make a big difference. For like little kids, just teaching them, to not be putting it in your mouth and things like that. Try not to inhale it.
Hmm.
Trying to keep things separate, like your clothes and your cleats separate, maybe taking it off at the door and things like that. So you're not tracking a bunch of that into your
Mm.
home. I really, really believe in the power of collective action. And so if you are a part of any sort of community, whether it's like a PTA or, whatever sports team, where you can come together with other parents and coaches,
Mhm.
because, I've seen stories of individual coaches getting fired for speaking out against turf and things like
Mhm.
that. But if you come together and the majority of people are saying, we do not want this in our community, we do not want this for our kids, there's going to be way more power in that.
Mhm.
And, this might go without saying, but I think that's going to be a much better long term solution than washing your hands after playing on
Right.
artificial turf.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with
Um,
the collective because, fighting big pharma or big government or, all these big companies, it's really tough to do that alone. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, we can only do it together as a collective. It's like, I think that's
Yes.
the only way that it's going to happen. One other little thing I will say on the like what we can do about
Mhm.
it is that they do have hybrid fields
Hmm.
now, which I don't know a lot about because a lot of the info is proprietary and so it's hard to tell. But for the people who are kind of more on the pro artificial turf side in terms of like the maintenance and being able to play year
Right.
round and things like that, and for high schools and professional teams, they have hybrid fields where it's real grass, but then underneath it is synthetic material, which helps with drainage and just generally making it. I mean, you still have to maintain it, but it's easier than real grass
Hmm.
in terms of making it last longer throughout the year. So, that might be a good middle ground solution as well. I don't think it's perfect because there are still synthetics
Right.
involved, but if you are in a scenario where, you need where like real grass isn't working for some
Hmm.
reason, I just want to throw that out there too, that there are hybrid options
That's really
as
interesting. And you
well.
would think, hopefully the grass would kind of work as a filter. I mean, that's what nature's all about. So is that going to help to filter out some of
Yes.
those, toxic vapors when it's a really hot day and, real grass is testing at 78% and artificial turf is testing at or 78 degrees versus 98 degrees? Because I've heard that there can be that much of a differential.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I would imagine the
Yes.
grass would
Huge,
keep
huge
the real
difference.
grass on, a composite or whatever it is going to keep the temperature down more so that you're not having that big vapor release that our kids are inhaling.
I think so. And the actual top part that you're actually like coming into contact with is real
That is
grass. So even
true.
though there's synthetic
Hmm.
involved, it's underneath the real grass.
Yeah.
So I would think it would be better for that reason as
Okay,
well.
that's really encouraging because, again, this is a topic I knew nothing about. And I want to talk about solutions. And, I love that you said when the kids come home, cleats stay outside, even shake your clothes off outside. This is one thing we didn't do when our kids were younger. And I remember finding all these little black, balls all over our house, which now I understand that
Yeah.
was whatever the composite, the turf part. And, you vacuum it up, but I'm sure it leaves residue in your house.
Yeah, I mean those little crumbs, they they're just it's just recycled tires and they're just going to break down into more and more microplastics,
Right.
whether it's like in your body, in the environment. And that's another thing about too, when there's flooding and stuff, those crumbs get washed away. So they just are ending up in our rivers, etc.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they're
Okay.
only going to break down into more microplastics.
Right. Which then gets into our ecosystem and the fish eat it. And
Yeah, so even if you can make the argument that the artificial turf is not going to be toxic for you as the person playing on
mhm,
it, which I don't even think you can make that argument
right.
anymore, it still is going to be contributing to our overall toxicity of our
Hmm.
environment, with those microplastics getting into, like you said, the soil, the food, the rainwater, and it's all of that stuff comes back to us
All
and
of
ends
that.
up back
There's
in our
there's a
bodies.
price to be paid for what looks like this is convenient because again, our kids can play year round and all those other things. But there is a price to be paid, be it with our kids' health or just our entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to regret it. I think that in 50 or 100 years, we'll look back and be like, plastic grass, what were you guys
What were you
doing?
thinking, people?
Same way that we do that now with leaded gasoline, and that wasn't even that
That
long
wasn't
ago.
even that
And
long
we look
ago.
back and we're like, well, that was dumb.
I know. I know. You want to say that like, well, that was dumb. Whose idea was that? But at the time, it seemed perfectly legitimate, seemed like a good choice. But this is the way things work, isn't it? And so
Well, it was
it was very
profitable.
profitable. And, people maybe weren't asking the right questions. So I think we're
Hmm.
learning, but as humans, it is a slow learning curve. But I love that we're talking about a topic that most people would never even question. You see I mean, we're so used to artificial turf. We drop our
Hmm.
kids off and they go and they practice and we pick them up. They're dirty. We've got stuff all over our car. We just don't really think about it.
Hmm.
And so
It's just
it's
there.
just there and it's like breathing. It's just like it feels like it's always been there and it's just going to always be there. But that's why conversations like this are so important because it brings
Hmm.
topics to light and that's why I'm grateful for your newsletter. I'm grateful for that UW coach who's keeping track of all of her young athletes who
Yeah.
were getting cancer. And these voices are really important.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for using your platform to talk about it. And, I think it's stressful and I never want to like stress parents
Hmm.
out or stress athletes out. And so I think that is why it's important to, still keep in mind all the benefits of playing a sport or
Hmm.
playing on a playground or whatever. But again, that's why I think it's just important that we come together to try and resist the turf
Right.
because, yeah,
Yeah.
I
It's
just,
important to talk
yeah.
about it. And I loved, what you said also that, look, your kids are not going to stop playing on turf. Like it's just the reality. If your kids are going to play sports all the way through high school and into college, they will be on turf. So wash your hands after you play. I mean, it's so common, especially, elementary and middle school. One of the parents is bringing, the snacks. Try to at least say to your kid, put a little water from your water bottle on your hands, kind of wipe them off before you get grab an orange or whatever it is. take your cleats off, change your shoes out as soon as before you get into the car, leave them outside. There are things we can do so we can really limit our exposure.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because that hand-to-mouth contact, especially with the younger kids who are putting their hands in their mouth a lot, that's going to be a big, kind of direct source. And you're gonna probably eat more of it than you would like absorb directly through your skin. So just teaching little kids not to
wash your hands, rinse your hands.
I know it's like way easier said than done.
I know
with the little kids.
So true, but having the awareness, telling your kids what to do, it really does go a long way. Yeah, especially as they get older and they're hopefully paying a little bit more attention to mom and dad.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, Abbie, thank you so much for bringing up this topic that most of us have no idea about. And I feel like you've given us some action steps so that we don't have to be scared of it. We can protect our kids, we can protect ourselves, and just continue to ask more questions.
Yes. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me and for talking about it with other people.
Thank you. And I love your newsletter, The Filtery. You do all the hard work for us. So thank you.
Yeah, I try.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
I know you're really going to enjoy today's episode with Abbie, and it's a short one, so it's going to go fast. Take lots of notes. Hey, y'all, can you do me a favor today and go and leave a review of this podcast? I know that the more great reviews, wink, wink, emphasis on great, reviews that I get, along with more downloads and more subscribers, that pushes this podcast out to people who might normally not even find it. And the reason I started this podcast and my real heart for starting this podcast is that I needed this information. It wasn't available. And so I started a podcast so that I could be a blessing to others. So you're a blessing to me just by being here. And again, thank you for your support. Thank you for your positive reviews and all of the notes that you send me. And also just wanted to say, hey, keep in mind, I'm not a doctor. And if you need medical advice, please reach out to your team. That is going to be just the best source for you because they know you. So again, I hope you enjoyed this podcast.